never ever have enough time to play at all. You know everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgot who they are.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Otter Creek in Rio Grande and the first Building Cloud City video. Now, if you've watched the channel for a while, you kind of have an idea of what the railroad looks like, and you know that this whole wall here, which is give or take 28, 29 feet, will be Cloud City. And I've created a playlist for pretty much every location, every town that exists on the railroad. So at any given point in time, if you want to go back and kind of see the progress of a location in a linear fashion, go to the playlist. Like you can look at Silver Gulch and you can see my first video where I was dealing with things specific to Silver Gulch. So that's what I'm going to get started doing here, primarily because I still don't have any of the material for the scratch build bridge that I'm working on, and I don't want to progress with any of the spline until I've solved all the problems there. So I'm going to do a few things in here, mostly temporary, because I'm going to put the large mill and supply company down here at this corner, and I'm going to mess around with some track in that location to see what's possible and what's not possible. And the first thing I'm going to need to do is get rid of this and put in a full sheet of plywood, because that's going to have to be done eventually. So I'm going to get started doing that and just bring you guys along with me. I've ghosted in a full sheet of plywood. You can see there's a nice huge notch there. And now from here to here is right at about 34 and a half inches. And then to the non-full sheet of plywood back there in the corner, it's more like 42 inches of clearance. So the goal is to mess around with some track up in this area and then eventually cut away as much of this plywood as I think I can get away with, depending on how it interfaces with the track plan. And that's probably what we ought to do next is look at the track plan and look at some track. Looking at Cloud City, I'm not sure, but I don't think I have shared any of this this track plan yet. I may have. I can't recall, but this is fairly new, a new concept for me. I've gone through this at least a half a dozen different times, and this is kind of where I'm at the moment. And you can see right here in in this corner, we've got the E. Carroll Mill and Supply Company, and what you see here on the screen is accurate to the actual building, probably within 1/8 of an inch. So the trick is going to be, can I create all of this track work in here in the given space and reality? For the most part, this is pretty close. From here, this is the very end of the time saver to this wall is 69 inches, 70 give or take. That's accurate. I think the difference is the radius of this particular curvature here, as it comes around the corner here, if you can see my cursor, that's a little different. And then of course the other kind of big issue is the distance from the wall here to here on the track plan is 42 inches, and on the layout it's 38. So that's going to be, is that going to cause problems? I'm not sure. I know one thing, I don't have any accurate measurements for the engine house itself, the roundhouse. And my thought is that if I'm off, by 5 or 6 inches, maybe, because it's not going to be an 8-stall roundhouse. It's probably going to be a 3-stall roundhouse. I'm just going to have to see what I can get away with. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to have to get this track configuration right here figured out. I need this turnout right here. That's got to be dual gauge because the red is all dual gauge. And then these two turnouts down here, I'm not sure. I'm guessing that they will both probably have to be custom built. That maybe not. I'm just going to have to see how it works out. So that's what I'm up against. All this is theory, and it's just a matter of, is it going to work? And if it's not going to work, what is going to work? So I do have some turnouts. Let me share those with you. A few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, Alan from Empire Trackworks reached out to me, and he offered to give me some free turnouts, which, at first I was like, what kind of gimmick is this? But we spoke on the phone, and he's like, no, I've been a fan of your channel for a while, and I've started up a custom turnout track work company, and I want to gift you some turnouts, and the only thing I ask in return is a fair review of the product. So, who's not gonna, or who is going to turn down some free turnouts? So I've got them, and I'm impressed with them so far. And you can see here, he deals in S gauge, high scale, high rail, SN, ON3, ON30, turnout sizes 4-5 all the way through 8. I assume that if you want to go beyond 8, maybe that's what he considers custom, but he does stub end 3-ways, regular 3-ways, point derails. Looks to me like he does pretty much everything, and it's all appears to be very reasonably priced too. I would say the price ranges are in line with a commercially built turnout from Pico or Walthers, just anywhere else you would get a turnout. Only these are, in my opinion, going to be more superior. Now, the only thing I have to compare one of his turnouts to is one of my own. So I figure that's a good place to start. And here's one that I'm working on. I'm not finished with yet. This one is going to go in for the mine area in Maroon Creek. And, the first big difference between his and mine is the amount of solder that his has versus mine. I pretty much glob it on either side of the rail. Probably don't need to do that. And then that's pretty much it for me. I've built a lot of these, and I've had good luck with most of them, but let's take a look at one of his now. All right, this is a number 8, and you can see he has extended the turnout well beyond the frog so that you can turn this into a crossover if you need to. And he adds an extra tie on the end beyond where you're gonna gap the rail to isolate the frog, which I do that as well. I haven't done it yet in this one, but I also do that. And then take a look at the solder joints, and you can see they're extremely clean. So if fine detail is really important to you and you don't want a glob of solder in the web of your rail because it doesn't look prototypical, then this is definitely something that you might want to take a look at. Just very clean. Now, another thing that he does as a modification is he adds these tabs to the bottom of this tie here, which is the one kind of dead center in the frog. And he's also got a tab here and a tab here, a tab here and a tab there that's connected to the bottom of the rails. So this center tab is connected so that your frog wire is going to it. So all of your frog is one polarity, and then this tab is going, it's gapped, if you can, it's kind of hard to see, but I believe the actual bottom side of this tie is gapped there. And so this wire is going to connect to the bottom on the PCB, and then it connects here. So all of this rail is the same polarity. And then on this end, you know, we've gapped it here so our frog is isolated. So you've got this and this so that you have juice going to the rails beyond the frog. And so I've got probably 3 different turnouts on the layout right now that, you know, when you install this and you add your track to it, whether it's all the way out here or if you do it close or wherever, if you need to isolate here for a block detection or for whatever reason, then you can end up with both of these rails being dead. And I think I've got 3, maybe 4 turnouts right now that about 2 inches of my rail is dead. Now on the locomotives with the keep alives, no problem, but some of my Blackstones will stall because I haven't dropped a wire in. Alan solves that with these tabs. So what you end up with is you've got your left rail, your right rail, or your A or your B, however you want to think of it, and then you've got your frog wire right here. And then so this entire turnout all the way out to here on all 4 of these rails all have juice. So you've got one common point that you can fire this thing up, and it's going to be good to go everywhere, and it'll be one hole drilled in the layout directly beneath the frog, and that's pretty cool. Now, I'll say this, if I was going to be critical of anything, why is the frog wire not green? That's I believe an industry standard that your frog wire is green. So now I'm not going to swap this out for a green frog wire. Hopefully no inspectors show up and start looking at the frog wires and find this one lone frog wire that's kind of a light orange instead of green. Questions could be asked. But I'm very pleased with this, and I'm going to get started moving turnouts around. I'm going to have to build the crossover before I do much anything else. So we'll see what goes on now. I don't know if I've ever shared how I create a crossover, but I thought I'd just kind of give an overview. What I've done is I've taped 3 different pieces of paper together, and then scribed a 2-inch line, two parallel lines 2 inches apart from each other. And I use my yardstick. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got an aluminum yardstick that just happens to be exactly 2 inches wide. It's great for this purpose. Now I've put in a couple of cross ties, and all I'm doing is I'm using Liquitex matte medium and gluing them on the lines here. And I've got this marked and this marked, and that's exactly where the points are, or the frogs, excuse me, exactly where the frogs are. So, you know, they're 12 inches apart from each other. Now that this one is placed, I can come in and I can solder this rail. And what I'll do is on these two rails here, the diverging route, I will cut right in between these two ties. And then once everything's soldered like it's supposed to be, then I'll introduce the next turnout and do a similar thing. That way I've created some strength in here. Everything should be good to go, and we'll be on an exact 2-inch spacing. That went fairly well. Everything is working good. Now I did go in and check everything out with the standards gauge. The geometry in both the frogs, all of that is perfect. Wheel sets run through just smooth as silk. The only thing that I found that was a little wonky was on this particular point set. The points did not want to fall in on the gauge to where they should, and kind of the toe of the point here was sticking out just a little bit from the stock rail, but with just, you know, 3 to 5 minutes of sanding with this, everything laid in there like it should. That's a very common thing with points on any of these is getting the point to sit just inside the head of the rail. And if you're using brand new tools, sometimes just going to where you're flush with the tool doesn't quite get it far enough into the head of the rail for the point to be recessed in the head of the rail. So, but other than that, it's great. And what I really like is that I've already got juice to everything inside here, the crossover. I'm gapped here, and both of these rails have juice to it because of the tabs on the underneath side of the frog there. A really nice design. I think now we just throw this up on the plywood and start seeing what we can come up with. I've messed around with this long enough to have a pretty good idea that some of it is plausible. In fact, I would say it's doable. And then some of it is just absolutely not going to work as the track plan exists at the moment. For sure, having any kind of entrance into the roundhouse and the turntable on the back side of this track is not going to work at all, given the current configuration of the plywood. And now I might be able to make something close to what's on the track plan work if I took up, maybe another 6 or 8 inches of the aisle space, but I don't think that's anything that I want to do. I think what I need to do is to go into the computer and make the plywood as it exists right now accurate in the computer. And then I can get a better idea of what I can do in the given space. So now I'm not going to do any of that in this video whatsoever, because I'm not ready to really focus on cloud. I'm just wanting to see what's possible and, more importantly, what's not possible. And so I did get that done. And so what I will do in cloud, probably again not in this video, is come up with something that is similar to what will exist that I can make use of right now that doesn't involve any tortoises or fancy electronics, because I just want to be able to bring a train in here, park it, maybe classify some cards, and of course be able to make use of the E. Carroll Mill and Supply Company. That's all I'm going to mess with in this video. I do want to close with some final thoughts on these really nice turnouts from Empire Trackworks. I'll do a final recap of these Empire Trackwork turnouts. And so really there's only 2 things that I found that I would say maybe could be improved on. And again, there might be something about what's going on here that, maybe Alan knows that I don't know. But as mentioned, the points gauge, if I can get it to focus, which are these 2 knots right here, should fall inside of the head of the rail right there. And I think virtually every one of my turnouts, they did not. Now, as mentioned before, when I very first got this tool, because this is the tool that you're going to use to make that happen, this side absolutely would not cut away enough of the head of the rail for any recess whatsoever for the point to go into the stock rail. This side always did. So, I assume that when they make these tools, there's, certain tolerances depending on how they do it, if they machine these, how sharp their tools are, if you're dialing down to a certain thousandths of an inch, just the human eye and the amount of error, whatever. Now that I've made, over 50 turnouts, I don't know, I'm probably getting close to 100, this side of the tool will cut away enough of the stock rail that, it recesses in. And you can see on the point closure on the diverging route, it flushes up in there and there's 0 issues whatsoever. And then if you close up on this side, if I can get it to focus, you can see there's just a little bit of a protrusion. And now that will never cause a derailment. Alan told me to tear him up or to give a straight ahead review, so that's what I'm doing. in my opinion, that needs to be recessed just a little bit, which is, you know, if you're building your own turnouts, that's just part of it. So that's the only thing. And as mentioned, the wheels run through fine on all of them. There was one that it didn't. Just a little bit of dressing up with this, no problems whatsoever. Now, the other thing I'll say that I think that Alan ought to consider, and maybe he's doing this already, I don't know, but I think everything that he shipped me came in this plastic bag, which is cool. I would suggest getting some cheap cardboard and maybe doing something like this. Of course, it's not long enough on this end. And then putting this that way there's zero chance on these longer turnouts that this could get damaged in shipping, because I don't trust UPS or the U.S. Postal Service whatsoever. So those are the only two things that I would say come close to any kind of critical critique. The rest of it, what I love about all of this is super clean solder joints, and the way that this is done with these tabs so that all of the rail beyond your gap point will be electrified, and you won't have to worry about adding another dropper here if you need to isolate the continuing track for block detection or for any other reason. So if you're someone who wants really good track work, but maybe you feel like you don't have the skill to do it, or maybe you just don't need enough to warrant purchasing the tools and the fixtures and stuff to do it, because you just need one or two turnouts, definitely take a look at Empire Trackworks. He pretty much does everything. Find his website. And as a matter of fact, if things work out the way they're supposed to, directly after this video premieres, I will do a live show and I'll speak with Alan directly. And if you're still in the chat, you can ask questions, and I've got some questions to ask him, and it should be a good time. So that's all for this video. Come back, see what goes on in Maroon Creek and Cloud City in the future. Thanks for watching the Otter Creek in Rio Grande.